Hi there and welcome back, friends of a thoughtful gaming experience. This is your host, Emmanuel Ken, and we are here for a new Wizardry 8 character building guide. This time, we're going to go for a mage. Now, what is the mage's group role in this game? Just to tell you if you want to add one in your group or not. Well, the group role of the mage is pretty simple. It's a caster of the traditional sort, like sorcerers, wizards. That is a mage. The mage mainly does magic damage. He has quite good buffs and he has debuffs for crowd control. So that's without any further explanations. That's what the mage does. It's a pretty one-dimensional class, but can be pretty fun, because you have many spells and different spell picks that you can choose, and yeah, there are many tactics to use different spells, and it's basically a very exciting class to play, even though there's not much variety in what skills should you take or something like that. So that's the mage for you. Now for the attributes of the mage, you can see here the game wants us to believe that intelligence and dexterity are important skills. Well, intelligence certainly is the most important attribute for a mage, but dexterity is just not important for the mage. Ignore dexterity. What you should go for is intelligence and speed, to be quick before the opponents are at their turn. You should be able to cast, so take intelligence, then speed, and then you should go for piety for even more spell points, and after that you can go for vitality or for senses, which one you prefer. Senses would bring you even more initiative, even earlier start of the round, and vitality brings you just plain old survival. Senses, though, it helps you for initiative, but it's only like around half as good as speed, and speed gets at the maximum. An epic skill which improves your initiative even more. Senses does not. It improves your ranged combat. So my preferred attributes are definitely intelligence, speed, and piety and vitality. But you can replace vitality with senses if you're feeling risky, lucky, or if you want, like, yeah, even quicker rounds. So what race should you take for the mage? There are some races pretty much made for mages, and for me it's 3 races that are very good. First one is the elf. As you can see, the elf has many bonus points. Elf has already very good resistances, so you have really high resistance in the mental realm here. And yeah, elf being the traditional magic users, they have a little low vitality, but that's okay with that number of bonus points here and the good resistance modifiers. So elf would be a good choice, and gnome as well. The gnome has a little bit more vitality, but a little bit lower speed, so it's just vice versa if you want. So you should raise speed then closely, but you have very good intelligence and you still have pretty okay resistances. So gnome would be a really good choice. And the last pick, the fairy. Now the fairy doesn't have access to many equipment choices, but as a mage that's not like a really big loss, because the mage doesn't have access to many special equipment choices or any good equipment. So the mage is basically mostly about casting, and the equipment is really secondary. So the fairy would be good with their special equipment and their base AC bonus and their even more resistance. So you have absolutely stunning resistance with a fairy. And that's why the fairy is a good mage. And to boot, he has also faster magic power recovery, which is like not absolutely super powerful because you can always rest, but it's nice. It will help you a bit in combat, and it's also nice. You don't have to rest usually after combats because the fairy will just regenerate those spell points. So there you go. I would go for a mail this with a mage because you always need, or you should use one mail in the group, and the casters are good for that as they don't need much stamina. So then we are taking the attributes. Let's just take the fairy mage for that matter. But I think my favorite would be the elf. But let's make a fairy now. So let's give him some intelligence, some speed, and as the vitality is very low, some vitality. And there you go. Now you're getting spell picks. Now the idea of spell picks in the early game, at least on expert level, is don't take spell picks you get by books early on. So don't take light in for that matter. Light won't help you much. You can take sleep, terror, energy blast, and frost. These books aren't. They are very early for you, so take one of them. If you have a good group that already does damage, take spells like terror and sleep, which will debuff and control opponents. If you want the mage to do damage, then take energy blast and frost, and generally look for at the start for a distribution of spell picks, so you get a spell from like all the schools, so you can train them, and one spell should be sufficient. The most important spells as a mage, where you raise your intelligence and so gain power cast for spell penetration, are basically usually the crowd controls, like sleep and terror. So energy blast and frost will be absolutely useless later. Sleep and terror can still be of some use, so even in the mid game. But yeah, so let's take sleep and terror for now. Let's assume we have some melee damage with us, and the mage controls the combat a bit. So what skills should you go for? That's a pretty easy choice. You should go for Wizardry. Always max Wizardry. You even have a bonus on that. And to boot, you should increase your respective spell schools. Just keep them balanced. It's just easy like that. And if you don't want to increase the spell schools, that's okay. Always increase Wizardry though. And the spell schools, yeah, as I said, they are just okay when you raise them by practice. You can then instead use your other skill points for intelligence-based skills like artifacts or communication. They will rise pretty much when you have a high intelligence. So if you don't have a bard with you, you can increase communication and, for example, artifacts to identify items better. Then, yeah, the mage will do pretty good on these intelligence-based skills and can improve your quality of life much, but make sure to always put points into Wizardry. So there's our mage. You have nice portraits as a fairy. I usually go for this one, looks pretty cool. And let's review that character. Now what you get as a fairy is a fairy stick, I believe, with a elf or human or a gnome. You get a standard quarterstaff, which even has extended range. With a fairy stick you don't get the extended range, but really you don't want to use that anyways, so it's okay. Like you get, as a fairy, you get the Gossamer Gone, which has a little bit more resistance even, and there too, so you will have a pretty high mental resistance with a fairy due to your starting equipment as well. But as I said, equipment is not that important for a mage. You later have access to some medallions and stuff that will increase intelligence and spell points and spell point regeneration. That will all be fine and good, and even a fairy can use the amulets, so that's why a fairy is also a pretty good mage, even though I would prefer the elf. Just I'm a traditionalist like that, and an elf mage is pretty cool. So you can see here you have the roster. So where should you place your mage? You should place your mage in one of the first slots, as he has some combat buffs that are pretty important and should be cast at the beginning of the combat. So place him in the first 2 slots here. How should you play the mage? Well, how should you? In the first rounds of a combat, if you think you need them, put out positive combat buffs for your party, then after that debuff enemies, and after that go for destroying of enemies. That would be the standard way you play a mage, mostly. And now there's one last thing. You have the tactical crosshair. Now let's load a game, right? Let's load the sample party, for that matter. And I think you have a mage there, yeah. Now we have the tactical crosshair here, and I usually organize this another way, as it's made here. Like it's not very effective at the start. Where's the mage? Here's the mage. You should always put your mage in the back, so he's protected, even though the back will be a little bit vulnerable, but put him in the back, definitely. We have other casters here, like the priest. I'll put them in the back too, and
all right.
Yeah, the other guys are pretty much okay that way.
Ready and willing.
But as I said, put your mage in the back, that's where he belongs. If you totally want to have all of these crosshair things accessed, then you could put your mage also in the middle to have the absolute protection for your mage. If he or she is the pinnacle of your strategy, then have him protected like that. But really, the standard backline would be the best position for the mage, and always make sure you have enough people between him and the enemies, because he's very vulnerable. So this was our mage guide here. I'd say, without any further ado, have fun playing with your new exciting mage, and yeah, see you in the next episode or in the next guide. This is Immanuel Can, wishing you happy gaming and signing out. Have a good day, or have a good night.